Imagine walking into your own company's headquarters, only to be treated like a criminal because of the color of your skin. What would you do when security guards refuse to believe you belong there? When employees mock your credentials and threaten to call the police? This is exactly what happened to one of the most powerful women in corporate America. And what she did next changed everything for everyone involved. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows across the gleaming glass facade of Meridian Technologies as Zara Williams stepped out of her black Tesla Model S. The 32-year-old CEO had built this company from a small startup in her garage to a billion-dollar tech empire specializing in artificial intelligence solutions for healthcare. But as she approached the main entrance of her own headquarters, she had no idea that her morning routine was about to become a nightmare that would expose the ugly truth lurking beneath her company's progressive exterior. Zara had arrived earlier than usual that Tuesday morning. She'd been in back-to-back meetings in Seattle for the past 3 days, finalizing a massive partnership deal with Microsoft that would revolutionize patient care across the country. The contract, worth over $400 million, was the culmination of months of negotiations and would cement Meridian Technologies as the leading AI healthcare provider in North America. She was exhausted but exhilarated, eager to share the news with her executive team and begin the implementation process. As she walked toward the entrance, Zara noticed something different about the lobby. There were new faces behind the security desk. Temporary contractors, she assumed, probably hired while the regular staff took their summer vacations. She pulled out her CEO access card, the same one she'd used every day for the past 5 years, and approached the turnstiles. The first sign of trouble came when Marcus Thompson, a bulky security guard with suspicious eyes, stepped directly into her path. His partner, a younger man named Jake Rodriguez, positioned himself behind the security desk, his hand hovering near the phone. Both men wore the standard Meridian security uniform, but their demeanor was anything but professional. "Excuse me, miss, you can't just walk in here," Marcus said, his voice dripping with condescension. "This is a private corporate facility. You need proper authorization." Zara paused, momentarily confused. She held up her access card, the one clearly labeled with her name and photo, along with the distinctive CEO designation. "I have my card right here. I'm Zara Williams, the CEO of this company." The reaction was immediate and shocking. Both guards burst into laughter, the sound echoing through the marble-floored lobby. Jake wiped tears from his eyes as he leaned back in his chair. "CEO? You've got to be kidding me. Lady, I don't know where you got that fake ID, but you picked the wrong building to try and scam your way into." Marcus stepped closer, his voice becoming more aggressive. "Look, sweetheart, I don't know what game you're playing, but we weren't born yesterday. The CEO of Meridian Technologies is a serious businessman, not some—" He paused, his eyes scanning Zara from head to toe with obvious disdain. "Not someone like you." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. In all her years building this company, fighting through the male-dominated tech industry, proving herself to investors and clients, she had never experienced such blatant disrespect within her own organization. She took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure while her mind raced through the implications of what was happening. "I understand there might be some confusion," Zara said, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. "But I am indeed the CEO. This is my building, my company. Perhaps you could call upstairs to verify my identity?" Jake's laughter became even louder. "Oh, this is rich! She wants us to call upstairs to verify her fake CEO story. Marcus, should we call the police instead? I'm pretty sure impersonating a corporate executive is some kind of fraud." More employees were beginning to arrive for the day, and Zara noticed several of them slowing down to watch the spectacle unfolding at the security desk. Some pulled out their phones, likely recording what they thought was an entertaining confrontation. Others whispered among themselves, their faces showing a mixture of curiosity and cruel amusement. Sarah Chen, a mid-level marketing manager, stopped near the entrance and openly stared. "What's going on here?" she asked Jake, making no effort to lower her voice. "Some woman is trying to pass herself off as our CEO," Jake replied, gesturing dismissively toward Zara. "Claims this fake ID makes her the boss of Meridian Technologies. Can you believe the nerve?" Sarah looked Zara up and down with the same judgmental expression as the security guards. That's ridiculous. Everyone knows what our CEO looks like. This is obviously some kind of scam or publicity stunt. Maybe she's one of those social media influencers trying to create viral content. The crowd was growing larger, and Zara realized that what had started as a simple misunderstanding was quickly spiraling into a public humiliation. Employees were pointing and laughing, some taking selfies with the fake CEO in the background. The very people whose paychecks she signed, whose healthcare benefits she personally insured were among the best in the industry, were treating her like a common criminal. Marcus crossed his arms and planted himself firmly in front of the turnstiles. Look, lady, I'm going to give you one more chance to leave quietly before we involve law enforcement. You can take your fake credentials and whatever sob story you've cooked up and try it somewhere else. We're not buying it here. Zara felt a familiar fire building in her chest, the same determination that had driven her to work 18-hour days as a young programmer, the same resolve that had helped her secure venture capital funding when every investor told her that young black women didn't build successful tech companies. But this time, the stakes were different. This wasn't about proving herself to strangers or competitors. This was about the culture she had unknowingly allowed to fester within her own organization. I'm going to ask you one more time to verify my identity, Zara said, her voice taking on the authoritative tone that had commanded boardrooms and sealed million-dollar deals. Call the executive floor. Ask for my assistant, Patricia Morrison. Tell her Zara Williams is in the lobby and needs immediate assistance. Jake rolled his eyes dramatically. Oh, now she knows the assistant's name, too. This woman really did her homework. Marcus, I think we should definitely call the cops. This is getting out of hand. The situation was attracting even more attention. David Kumar, a software engineer, had joined the growing crowd and was live-streaming the confrontation on his phone. This is wild, guys, he whispered to his online audience. Some woman is trying to break into Meridian Technologies claiming to be our CEO. Security is about to have her arrested. More employees gathered, their morning coffee forgotten as they watched what they believed was an elaborate con artist being exposed. The lobby filled with whispers, laughter, and the distinctive sound of phone cameras capturing every moment. Zara realized that videos of this encounter would likely be circulating on social media within minutes, potentially damaging not only her personal reputation, but also the company's image. But something else was happening too. As Zara stood there, facing the mockery and disbelief of her own employees, she began to understand the true scope of the problem within Meridian Technologies. The company she had built with the mission of breaking down barriers and creating equal opportunities in healthcare technology had somehow become a place where assumptions about race and gender could override basic professionalism and common sense. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, a woman who had revolutionized AI algorithms to eliminate bias in medical diagnoses, standing in her own lobby while being judged by the exact same prejudices her technology was designed to combat. The employees laughing at her were the same ones who attended diversity training sessions, who posted about equality on their LinkedIn profiles, who proudly worked for a company known for its inclusive values. Marcus reached for his radio, preparing to call for backup or law enforcement. Control. This is lobby security. We have a situation here with someone attempting to gain unauthorized access using fraudulent identification. Request immediate. Wait, Zara interrupted, her hand moving to her phone. Before you make that call, let me show you something that might interest you. She opened her phone and navigated to the Meridian Technologies internal app, the one that only employees could access with biometric verification. Her thumbprint unlocked a dashboard showing real-time company metrics, employee schedules, and executive communications, information that would be impossible for an outsider to access. But Marcus barely glanced at the screen. Lady, I don't care what apps you've got on your phone. Fake IDs, fake apps, fake everything. You con artists are getting more sophisticated every day, but you're not fooling anyone here. The crowd murmured in agreement. Someone in the back called out, Just call the police already. This is embarrassing for everyone. Zara closed her phone and looked around at the faces surrounding her. These weren't strangers on the street or competitors trying to undermine her success. These were people she had hired, people whose careers she had nurtured, people who worked every day to advance the mission she had created. Yet here they stood, united in their certainty that someone who looked like her couldn't possibly be in a position of real authority. The moment crystallized something that had been building in Zara's mind for months. She had been so focused on external challenges, market competition, regulatory hurdles, technological breakthroughs, that she had failed to address the internal culture that allowed this kind of thinking to flourish. The diversity metrics looked good on paper, the training programs met all compliance requirements, but the fundamental attitudes that led to this moment had been hiding in plain sight. Jake stood up from his desk, his chest puffed out with self-importance. "All right, everyone, show's over. Ma'am, you have exactly 30 seconds to leave this building voluntarily, or we're calling the police. Your choice." The crowd pressed closer, phones recording every word, every gesture. Zara could see the excitement in their eyes. They thought they were witnessing the takedown of a sophisticated criminal, a story they could tell for years to come. None of them seemed to consider, even for a moment, that they might be wrong. As the seconds ticked by, Zara made a decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing to argue with the security guards, instead of demanding to speak to someone in authority, she would let this play out exactly as her employees wanted it to. She would give them the full experience of their assumptions, and then she would show them the consequences of those choices in a way they would never forget. "You know what," Zara said, stepping back from the turnstiles with her hands raised in apparent surrender. "You're absolutely right to be cautious about security. A CEO would definitely want her building protected from unauthorized access." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The guards exchanged satisfied glances, interpreting her words as an admission of defeat. The crowd began to disperse, disappointed that the confrontation was ending without the dramatic arrest they had been anticipating. But Zara wasn't done. She pulled out her phone again, this time opening her contacts and scrolling to a number she rarely had to use. The direct line to the Board of Directors' emergency communication system. As the founder and majority shareholder of Meridian Technologies, she had certain privileges that even she preferred not to exercise. Today would be an exception. The phone rang twice before connecting to an automated system that required biometric verification and a series of security codes that only 3 people in the world possessed. Zara's voice was calm and professional as she spoke the required phrases, her words creating a digital record that would be time-stamped and legally binding. What happened next would transform not just the lives of everyone in that lobby, but the entire culture of one of America's most successful technology companies. Within seconds of Zara completing her authentication sequence, her phone buzzed with an incoming call from Patricia Morrison, her executive assistant of 4 years. Patricia's voice was frantic as it came through the speaker, loud enough for the lingering security guards to hear. "Ms. Williams, thank God you called the emergency line. I've been trying to reach you for the past hour. The Microsoft delegation arrived early for the contract signing ceremony, and they're asking where you are. The entire executive team is in conference room A waiting for you to present the Seattle deal." Marcus and Jake exchanged confused glances. The phone call sounded legitimate, but they had already committed to their position. Jake leaned toward Marcus and whispered, "Probably has an accomplice. These scammers work in teams now." Zara held up a finger to indicate she was still on the call. "Patricia, I'm currently in the main lobby dealing with a security situation. It seems our new temporary guards don't recognize me and believe my identification is fraudulent." Patricia's gasp was audible through the speaker. "What? That's impossible! Your photo is literally hanging in the lobby next to the company mission statement. How could anyone not?" "Wait, are you serious? This isn't some kind of joke?" The mention of the photo caused several employees to turn toward the wall behind the reception desk. There, in a prominent position next to the company's core values, hung a large professional portrait of Zara Williams with the caption, "Founder and CEO," clearly visible beneath it. The photo showed her in the same navy blue blazer she was wearing at that very moment. Sarah Chen's face went pale as the realization hit her. She grabbed David Kumar's arm and pointed toward the wall. "Oh my God, David, look at the portrait. Look at her. That's actually..." David's live stream suddenly went silent as he lowered his phone, his face draining of color. Other employees began to notice the resemblance, then the identical clothing, then the dawning horror of what they had just witnessed and participated in. But Marcus refused to back down. Listen, lady, I don't care who you've got on the phone or what pictures you've doctored, anyone can get photos printed. I've seen this kind of elaborate con before. You're not getting past this desk without proper verification from someone I can trust. Zara looked directly into Marcus's eyes. And who exactly would you trust to verify my identity? The real CEO, Marcus replied smugly, or someone from the executive team who actually knows what the boss looks like. At that moment, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and out stepped Robert Hayes, Meridian Technologies' chief financial officer. Robert was a tall, distinguished man in his 50s who had been with the company since its early days. He had been instrumental in securing their initial venture capital funding and had worked closely with Zara through every major milestone in the company's growth. Robert was scrolling through his tablet, reviewing financial projections for the morning's presentation, when he looked up and saw the crowd gathered around the security desk. His eyes immediately found Zara standing in the center of the chaos, and his expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "Zara, what's going on here? Why aren't you upstairs? The Microsoft team is asking for you, and we're supposed to start the presentation in 10 minutes. The lobby fell into stunned silence. Robert's words carried the weight of undeniable truth, spoken by someone whose authority none of the employees would question. The CFO's casual familiarity with Zara, his obvious expectation that she should be upstairs in the executive boardroom, shattered any remaining doubt about her identity. Marcus's face went from confident to confused to terrified in the span of 3 seconds. Jake stood frozen behind the security desk, his mouth hanging open as the full magnitude of their mistake became clear. The employees who had been filming and laughing began to back away slowly, desperately hoping they hadn't been captured clearly in any of the videos that were probably already spreading across social media. Robert approached the group, his business instincts immediately recognizing that something serious had occurred. "Someone please explain to me why our CEO is standing in the lobby instead of leading the most important board meeting of the quarter." Sarah Chen, who had been one of the most vocal spectators, tried to disappear behind a pillar, but it was too late. Zara had already noticed her participation in the morning's events. David Kumar had stopped his livestream entirely, but the damage was already done. Thousands of viewers had witnessed Meridian Technologies employees mocking their own CEO. Jake finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Sir, we thought her identification looked suspicious, and we were just following protocol for unauthorized personnel." Robert examined Zara's access card, the same type he carried in his own wallet. "This is a standard executive access card with all the proper security features and biometric coding. What exactly did you find suspicious about it?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Everyone in the lobby knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it out loud. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Marcus finally spoke up, his earlier bravado completely gone. We didn't think. She doesn't look like." "Like what?" Robert's voice was sharp now, cutting through Marcus's stammering explanation. As CFO, Robert had sat through countless diversity and inclusion training sessions, had helped craft the company's anti-discrimination policies, and had worked alongside Zara to build an organization that prided itself on equality and innovation. The implications of what had happened were becoming crystal clear. Zara decided it was time to take control of the situation. "Robert, I appreciate your concern, but I can handle this from here. However, I think we need to postpone the Microsoft presentation by 30 minutes. Something has come up that requires immediate attention." "Of course," Robert replied, though his voice carried obvious worry. "Should I reschedule the board meeting as well?" "No, don't reschedule. Expand it. I want every department head in that conference room within the next 20 minutes. Finance, marketing, human resources, operations, security management, and legal. This is now a company-wide priority." Patricia's voice came through the phone speaker again. "Ms. Williams, I'll send out the emergency meeting notifications immediately. Should I include the reason for the meeting in the message?" Zara looked around the lobby at the faces of her employees, some horrified by their realization of what they had done, others still trying to process the dramatic shift in the situation, and a few desperately hoping they could somehow escape accountability for their actions. "Tell them we're conducting an immediate review of our corporate culture and employee conduct policies. And Patricia, make sure the meeting is recorded for compliance purposes." The word compliance sent a visible shudder through the remaining crowd. In the corporate world, compliance reviews were serious business, often resulting in significant policy changes and personnel actions. The employees who had been so eager to witness Zara's humiliation began to understand that they might have just jeopardized their own careers. Marcus made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Ma'am, I mean Ms. Williams, I was just doing my job. We get training about security threats and unauthorized access attempts. I was following the protocols we were taught." Zara turned to face him directly. "And what part of your security training taught you to ignore valid company identification? What protocol instructed you to refuse verification procedures? Which manual told you to publicly humiliate someone before investigating their credentials?" Marcus had no answer. The truth was that he had acted purely on assumption and prejudice, not on any actual security protocol. The company's real procedures required guards to verify questionable identification through proper channels, not to make unilateral decisions based on personal judgment. Jake stepped out from behind the security desk, his hands shaking slightly. "Ms. Williams, I want to apologize. We made a terrible mistake, and I take full responsibility for my actions." "Your apology is noted," Zara replied coolly. "However, apologies don't address the systemic issues that allowed this situation to occur. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a failure of judgment that reveals deeper problems within our organization." Robert checked his watch and looked nervously toward the elevators. "Zara, I hate to interrupt, but the Microsoft executives are going to start wondering where we are. This deal is crucial for our Q3 projections." "The Microsoft deal will proceed as planned," Zara assured him. "But first, we're going to address the fact that the CEO of the company they're partnering with was just treated like a criminal by her own employees. I have a feeling they'll be very interested to hear about our corporate culture firsthand." The remaining employees began to scatter, suddenly remembering urgent tasks that required their immediate attention. But Zara's voice stopped them in their tracks. "Anyone who witnessed or participated in this morning's events will remain available for individual meetings with human resources today. Leaving the building or becoming unavailable will be considered a violation of company policy." Sarah Chen looked like she was about to faint. David Kumar clutched his phone, probably wondering if he could somehow delete the footage he had broadcast live to his followers. The security guards stood frozen, understanding that their employment status was hanging by a thread. As the elevator arrived to take her upstairs, Zara turned back to address the lobby one final time. This company was built on the principle that talent and character matter more than appearance or background. Today, some of you forgot that principle. What happens next will determine whether Meridian Technologies continues to live up to its values, or whether we need to make some significant changes to ensure it does. The elevator doors closed, leaving behind a lobby full of people who were just beginning to understand the consequences of their assumptions. The executive conference room on the 40th floor buzzed with nervous energy as department heads filed in for the emergency meeting. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, but today the usual appreciation for the vista was replaced by anxiety and whispered conversations about what had transpired in the lobby. Jennifer Walsh, the head of human resources, sat at the polished mahogany table reviewing the preliminary reports that had already reached her desk. In the 20 minutes since Zara's call, Jennifer had received no fewer than 12 separate accounts of the lobby incident, each more disturbing than the last. Videos were circulating internally, and she knew it was only a matter of time before they appeared on external social media platforms. Thomas Miller, the chief operating officer, paced near the windows while fielding calls from concerned board members who had somehow already heard about the situation. The business world moved fast, and news of a CEO being denied access to her own building was the kind of story that could damage investor confidence and partnership agreements. "How the hell did this happen?" Thomas muttered into his phone. "No, sir, I don't have all the details yet, but I can assure you it's being handled at the highest level." Robert Hayes entered the room carrying a stack of printed emails and incident reports. As CFO, he understood better than anyone how quickly corporate crises could escalate into financial disasters. The Microsoft deal alone was worth nearly $500 million, and any suggestion that Meridian Technologies had internal culture problems could jeopardize not just that partnership but future opportunities as well. "The Microsoft executives are asking questions," Robert announced to the room. "They heard commotion in the lobby when they arrived, and their security detail is concerned about our internal protocols. I managed to get them settled in the VIP lounge, but we need to address this immediately." Dr. Lisa Parker, the chief technology officer, looked up from her laptop, where she had been monitoring social media mentions of the company. It's already starting to spread online. Someone named David Kumar was live streaming the whole thing. The video has been shared 47 times in the past 15 minutes, and the hashtag Meridian Scandal is starting to trend locally. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. In the modern business environment, corporate reputation could be destroyed in hours through viral social media campaigns. Companies had lost millions in market value over far smaller incidents, and the optics of this situation were particularly damaging given Meridian's public commitment to diversity and inclusion. Amanda Foster, the head of corporate communications, burst through the conference room doors carrying her phone and a tablet. "We have a major problem. The story is being picked up by tech blogs, and I'm getting calls from business journalists asking for comment. Someone leaked the security footage to TechCrunch, and they're preparing an expose about discrimination in Silicon Valley." Jennifer Walsh stood up and moved to the front of the room. "Before we discuss media strategy, we need to understand exactly what happened and who was involved. I've compiled a preliminary list of employees who were present during the incident, and we need to address the legal implications immediately." The conference room door opened, and Zara Williams entered with a presence that commanded immediate attention. Gone was any trace of the frustration or anger she had displayed in the lobby. Instead, she projected the calm authority that had built Meridian Technologies into an industry leader. Behind her walked Patricia Morrison, carrying a thick folder of documents and a laptop. "Good morning, everyone," Zara said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "I trust you've all been briefed on this morning's events. Before we discuss solutions, I want to make sure we have a complete understanding of what occurred and why." Patricia distributed printed copies of the incident timeline to each department head. The document was comprehensive, including timestamps, names of involved parties, and even screenshots from the social media posts that were already circulating. The efficiency and thoroughness of the report demonstrated the kind of systematic approach that had made Meridian Technologies successful. "At approximately 8:47 a.m., Zara began, "I arrived at our headquarters and was prevented from entering by temporary security personnel who deemed my company identification fraudulent. What followed was a 40-minute ordeal during which multiple employees witnessed, participated in, or encouraged the harassment of someone they believed to be an imposter attempting to access our facilities." Thomas Miller shifted uncomfortably in his chair. As COO, building security ultimately fell under his purview, and he was beginning to realize the scope of his potential liability. "Zara, I want to personally apologize for this breakdown in our security protocols. The temporary agency assured us that all personnel were properly trained." "The training of temporary security staff is certainly an issue we'll address," Zara replied. "But the more concerning problem is the behavior of our permanent employees. We have 17 full-time staff members who actively participated in or encouraged the harassment. These aren't temporary workers. These are people we've hired, trained, and trusted to represent our company values." Jennifer Walsh opened her laptop and began reading from her preliminary investigation notes. "I've identified several categories of problematic behavior. First, we have employees who recorded the incident for personal entertainment. Second, we have staff members who made disparaging comments about the supposed, quote, imposter. Third, we have individuals who encouraged the security guards to call law enforcement. And fourth, we have people who shared or attempted to share the content on social media platforms." Dr. Parker looked up from her own notes. "From a technology perspective, we also have a security breach issue. David Kumar used company Wi-Fi to live stream internal security procedures to an external platform. That's a violation of our data protection protocols regardless of the circumstances." Amanda Foster raised her hand. "Speaking of external platforms, we need to discuss immediate damage control. The story is gaining traction, and I'm receiving interview requests from major news outlets. Forbes wants a statement about discrimination in tech companies, and the Wall Street Journal is asking about the impact on our Microsoft partnership." Zara nodded thoughtfully. "The media attention is unfortunate but not unexpected. However, our primary concern should be addressing the underlying culture that allowed this incident to occur. This wasn't a single bad actor or an isolated mistake. This was a systematic failure that involved multiple levels of our organization." Robert Hayes consulted his financial projections. "Zara, I have to ask about the potential impact on our quarterly earnings. If this story continues to grow, we could see effects on our stock price, partnership negotiations, and investor confidence. The board is already asking questions." The board will receive a full briefing later today, Zara assured him, but I want to be clear about our priorities. We're not going to manage this crisis by hiding from it or minimizing its significance. We're going to address it head-on by demonstrating that Meridian Technologies holds itself to the highest standards of accountability. Thomas Miller leaned forward. What exactly does that mean in practical terms? Quote, Zara opened her own folder and withdrew a document that she had been preparing during her elevator ride to the 40th floor. It means that effective immediately, we're implementing a comprehensive review of our hiring practices, security protocols, and workplace culture initiatives. Every employee who participated in this morning's incident will undergo mandatory sensitivity training and performance review. Jennifer Walsh nodded approvingly. I can coordinate with our external training providers to develop a customized program. We should also consider bringing in independent consultants to audit our current diversity and inclusion practices. Agreed, Zara replied. But training and audits are just the beginning. We also need to address the immediate consequences for the individuals involved. People need to understand that there are real repercussions for behavior that contradicts our company values. Amanda Foster looked nervous. Are we talking about terminations? Because if we fire multiple employees over this incident, it could create additional media attention and potential legal challenges. Legal challenges work both ways, Zara pointed out. We also have potential liability if we fail to address discriminatory behavior in our workplace. The incident was recorded, witnessed by dozens of people, and has already been broadcast publicly. Our response will be scrutinized regardless of what action we take. Dr. Parker closed her laptop and looked directly at Zara. I think we need to consider the broader implications here. This incident has revealed that despite all our diversity initiatives and training programs, we still have employees who harbor fundamental biases about who can and cannot hold positions of authority. That's not a problem we can solve with a workshop or a policy memo. The observation struck at the heart of what had been troubling Zara since the lobby confrontation. Meridian Technologies had always prided itself on being progressive, innovative, and inclusive. They had won awards for their workplace culture, their leadership development programs, and their commitment to equal opportunity. Yet when faced with a real test of those values, multiple employees had failed spectacularly. You're absolutely right, Lisa, Zara said. This incident is a symptom of a larger issue that we've been avoiding or overlooking. We've been measuring our success in diversity by looking at hiring statistics and training completion rates. But we haven't been examining whether our culture actually supports the people we hire. Thomas Miller pulled up his own incident reports. I've been reviewing our security protocols, and there's nothing in our procedures that would justify the guards' behavior. They had multiple options for verification that they simply chose not to use. The real question is why they made those choices. The why is obvious, Jennifer Walsh said bluntly. They made assumptions based on race and gender. They couldn't conceive of a young black woman being in a position of corporate authority, so they rejected evidence that contradicted their preconceptions. The stark honesty of Jennifer's assessment silenced the room. Everyone understood the truth of her words, but hearing them spoken aloud made the situation feel even more serious and urgent. Robert Hayes checked his watch. Zara, I hate to interrupt this discussion, but the Microsoft team is expecting us in 10 minutes. How do you want to handle the presentation given everything that's happened? Zara stood up and walked to the windows, looking out at the city where Meridian Technologies had grown from a startup dream into a billion-dollar reality. When she turned back to face her executive team, her expression was resolute. We're going to proceed with the Microsoft presentation exactly as planned. But first, we're going to do something that will send a clear message about how Meridian Technologies handles accountability and leadership. She returned to her seat and opened her laptop, pulling up what appeared to be a company-wide email draft. I'm going to personally address every employee about this morning's incident, the actions we're taking in response, and the standards we expect moving forward. The email will go out before our presentation begins, and it will make clear that discrimination and harassment have no place in this organization. Patricia Morrison had been quietly taking notes throughout the meeting. She looked up from her notepad with a concerned expression. Ms. Williams, are you sure you want to address this so directly? Sometimes these situations benefit from a more measured response over time. Patricia, I've spent my entire career being measured and diplomatic about discrimination. I've smiled politely when investors question my qualifications, I've ignored condescending comments at industry conferences, and I've worked twice as hard as my competitors to prove I belong in this position. But this morning in my own building, my own employees treated me like a criminal because of how I look. Measured responses are no longer sufficient. The executives exchanged glances, recognizing that they were witnessing a pivotal moment not just for the company, but for Zara's leadership philosophy. The woman who had built Meridian Technologies through careful strategy and diplomatic relationship building was about to take a much more direct approach to corporate accountability. "So what's the plan?" Amanda Foster asked, her communications background already shifting into crisis management mode. Zara's smile was sharp and determined. "We're going to show everyone, our employees, our partners, our investors, and our competitors, exactly what happens when people underestimate Meridian Technologies and its leadership." The Microsoft delegation waited in the VIP conference room, their polished laptops and legal documents spread across the imported Italian marble table. James Richardson, Microsoft's Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, checked his Rolex for the third time in 5 minutes, while his team of lawyers and technical advisors maintained professional smiles that were beginning to show strain around the edges. "This is highly unusual," murmured Catherine Chen, Microsoft's lead counsel. "In 15 years of corporate partnerships, I've never seen a CEO delay a contract signing of this magnitude. The preliminary reports from their lobby are concerning." James nodded grimly. The $400 million partnership wasn't just another business deal. It represented Microsoft's entrance into the AI-driven healthcare market, a sector projected to be worth over $2 trillion within the next decade. Meridian Technologies' algorithms had proven more accurate than any competitors, but corporate instability could derail everything. Meanwhile, 3 floors below, the atmosphere in Meridian's main workspace had shifted dramatically. Word of the lobby incident had spread through the building like wildfire, carried by text messages, Slack notifications, and hushed conversations in break rooms. Employees huddled around computer screens, watching David Kumar's live stream footage that had been screen recorded and shared dozens of times before he could delete the original broadcast. In the marketing department, tensions were running particularly high. Sarah Chen sat at her desk, her face pale as she stared at an email summons for an immediate meeting with human resources. Around her, colleagues whispered and stole glances, some offering sympathetic looks, while others maintained careful distance, as if her involvement in the morning's events might somehow be contagious. "Sarah, you need to see this," whispered her cubicle neighbor Monica Valdez, sliding her phone across the desk. The screen displayed a Twitter thread that was gaining momentum by the minute. Thread: "What I witnessed at Meridian Tech this morning will shock you. CEO denied entry to her own building because security guards thought a black woman couldn't possibly run a billion-dollar company. This is 2025, people. How is this still happening?" Thread 1/7. The thread included screenshots from David's livestream, photos of the lobby confrontation, and commentary from diversity advocates who were already calling for boycotts and investigations. The hashtag #MeridianGate was trending in 3 major cities, and business journalists were reaching out to anyone who worked at the company. Sarah's hands trembled as she scrolled through the responses. Hundreds of people were sharing their own experiences with workplace discrimination, while others defended the security guards or questioned the authenticity of the incident. The story was taking on a life of its own, far beyond the walls of Meridian Technologies. Down in the security office, Marcus Thompson and Jake Rodriguez sat in uncomfortable silence while their supervisor, Helen Murphy, reviewed the incident footage on multiple camera angles. Helen had been Meridian's head of security for 8 years, and she had never encountered anything remotely comparable to this morning's disaster. "Explain to me," Helen said without looking up from the monitors, "how 2 trained security professionals decided to ignore every verification protocol in our manual. Walk me through your thought process, step by step." Marcus shifted in his chair, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. "Ma'am, in our experience, people who try to gain unauthorized access often use sophisticated fake identification. We've had training about corporate espionage and social engineering attacks." "And what part of your training told you to refuse verification calls?" Helen's voice was ice cold. "What manual instructed you to publicly humiliate someone before investigating their credentials? Which protocol is said to threaten police involvement without following proper escalation procedures?" Jake stared at his hands. "There's no protocol for that, ma'am. We made a judgment call." "A judgment call? Helen finally looked up from the screens, her expression conveying exactly what she thought of their judgment. Based on what criteria? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you made assumptions about who could and couldn't be a CEO based on factors that have nothing to do with security. The truth hung in the air between them. Both guards knew they had acted on prejudice rather than procedure, but admitting it out loud would end their careers permanently. The security industry was small, and word of discrimination incidents traveled fast among employers. Back on the executive floor, Zara finished composing her company-wide email while her assistant Patricia coordinated with the IT department to ensure maximum visibility. The message would appear as a priority notification on every company device, from desktop computers to mobile phones, and would be impossible to ignore or dismiss without reading. "Are you ready to send this?" Patricia asked, her finger hovering over the distribution button. Zara reviewed the message one final time. It was direct, uncompromising, and left no doubt about the company's position on the morning's events. More importantly, it outlined specific consequences that would take effect immediately. "Send it," Zara confirmed. Within seconds, computers throughout the Meridian Technologies building chimed with incoming notifications. Employees opened the message to find a statement that was unlike anything they had ever received from corporate leadership. Subject: immediate action required. Unacceptable conduct in our workplace. To all Meridian Technologies employees. This morning, I was denied entry to our headquarters by security personnel who deemed my company identification fraudulent. What followed was a systematic failure of judgment, professionalism, and basic human decency that involved multiple members of our team. I watched as employees laughed, recorded videos, and encouraged the harassment of someone they believed to be an imposter. Not a single person questioned whether the security guards might be wrong. Not one individual suggested following proper verification procedures. Instead, assumptions were made based on appearance, and those assumptions were defended with mockery and threats. The individual being harassed was me, your CEO, the founder of this company, and the person responsible for every paycheck you receive. Effective immediately, the following actions will be taken. All employees who participated in or encouraged this morning's incident will be suspended pending investigation. Our security contractors will be terminated, and new protocols will be implemented immediately. Every department will undergo mandatory bias training conducted by external consultants. We will be conducting a comprehensive review of our hiring, promotion, and workplace culture practices. Any employee found to have violated our anti-discrimination policies will face appropriate disciplinary action up to and including termination. This incident has revealed that despite our stated commitment to diversity and inclusion, we have failed to create a workplace where all employees are treated with respect and dignity. That failure ends today. Meridian Technologies was built on the principle that innovation comes from embracing different perspectives and backgrounds. If you cannot support that principle, you do not belong here. Zara Williams, founder and CEO, Meridian Technologies. The response was immediate and dramatic. Some employees stared at their screens in shock, finally understanding the full magnitude of what had occurred. Others frantically checked their phones to see if they had been captured in any of the videos circulating online. A few began quietly updating their LinkedIn profiles and reaching out to professional contacts. In the marketing department, Sarah Chen's face went white as she realized her participation had been documented by multiple cameras and witnesses. Her colleague Monica grabbed her arm supportively, but Sarah knew that sympathy wouldn't protect her from the consequences of her actions. David Kumar, who had inadvertently live-streamed the entire incident to his followers, sat frozen at his workstation as the implications became clear. Not only had he violated company policy by broadcasting internal security procedures, but he had also provided evidence that would be used in the investigation against multiple employees. The building's atmosphere shifted palpably as word spread about the suspensions and investigations. Productivity ground to a halt as employees whispered in corridors and clustered around coffee machines, trying to understand who might be affected and how extensive the fallout would be. Meanwhile, news of the incident was spreading beyond Meridian Technologies. Business reporters were calling competitors for comment, diversity advocates were organizing response campaigns, and social media influencers were sharing their own experiences with workplace discrimination. The story was evolving from a corporate crisis into a broader conversation about bias in the technology industry. Robert Hayes fielded another call from a concerned board member while monitoring the company's stock price, which had begun fluctuating as news of the incident reached financial markets. "Yes, sir. I understand your concerns. Zara is handling the situation personally, and we expect to have a full resolution within hours." But even as he provided reassurances, Robert knew that the true test of Meridian Technologies' response was still to come. The Microsoft presentation would determine whether the company could maintain its business relationships while addressing its internal problems, and Zara's handling of the partnership meeting would set the tone for how the crisis would be resolved. Thomas Miller appeared in the conference room doorway, his expression grim. "Zara, the Microsoft team is asking specific questions about our corporate governance and workplace policies. They've heard about the incident, and they want to understand how it might affect our partnership agreement." Zara closed her laptop and stood up, straightening her blazer with the same confident gesture she had used countless times before entering important negotiations. "Then it's time to show them exactly what kind of company Meridian Technologies really is, and what kind of leader they'll be partnering with." As she walked toward the door, Patricia called out with one final update. "Ms. Williams, the suspension notices have been delivered. 17 employees are currently being escorted from the building, and HR is coordinating the investigation timeline." Zara paused at the threshold, looking back at her executive team. "Good. Now let's go and secure the most important partnership in our company's history, while the business world watches to see how we handle accountability and leadership under pressure." The next 30 minutes would determine not just the fate of the Microsoft deal, but the future reputation and culture of Meridian Technologies itself. The polished oak doors of the VIP conference room opened with practiced silence as Zara Williams entered, flanked by her executive team. The Microsoft delegation rose from their seats in unison, their expressions carefully neutral despite the morning's dramatic events that had undoubtedly reached their ears. James Richardson extended his hand with the measured professionalism that had made him one of Microsoft's most successful partnership architects. "Ms. Williams, thank you for accommodating our early arrival. I trust everything is settled from this morning's complications?" Zara met his handshake with firm confidence, her demeanor showing no trace of the confrontation that had occurred just hours earlier. "Mr. Richardson, welcome to Meridian Technologies. I apologize for the delay, but I believe you'll find that our response to unexpected challenges demonstrates exactly the kind of decisive leadership that will make our partnership extraordinarily successful." Catherine Chen, Microsoft's lead counsel, studied Zara with the analytical precision that had earned her a reputation as one of the most thorough legal minds in corporate America. She had reviewed Meridian's financials, technical capabilities, and market projections, but this morning's incident introduced variables that couldn't be quantified in spreadsheets. "Ms. Williams," Catherine began carefully, "our security team has briefed us on the situation in your lobby. While we certainly don't wish to intrude on internal matters, Microsoft takes corporate culture very seriously when evaluating long-term partnerships. Could you help us understand how this morning's events align with your company's stated commitment to diversity and inclusion?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every person in the room understood that Catherine wasn't simply making conversation. She was conducting a real-time assessment of whether Microsoft should proceed with a $400 million partnership with a company that might have systemic cultural problems. Zara walked to the head of the conference table, her movements deliberate and controlled. Instead of taking her seat immediately, she remained standing, commanding the attention of everyone present. "Ms. Chen, that's exactly the right question to ask, and I'm going to give you a completely honest answer that I believe will exceed your expectations for corporate accountability." She gestured toward the wall-mounted display screen, which Patricia activated remotely to show a real-time dashboard of company metrics. This morning, 17 Meridian Technologies employees were suspended for participating in or encouraging discriminatory behavior towards someone they assumed couldn't hold a position of authority. Those suspensions took effect within 2 hours of the incident occurring. The Microsoft team exchanged glances, clearly not expecting such immediate and comprehensive action. Most corporations took weeks or months to investigate workplace incidents, often hoping that negative publicity would fade without decisive intervention. Furthermore, Zara continued, pulling up additional screens showing policy documents and training schedules, We've implemented emergency protocols that include mandatory bias training for all staff, a complete overhaul of our security procedures, and the engagement of external consultants to audit our entire workplace culture program. Robert Hayes stepped forward with a tablet containing financial projections. From a business perspective, Microsoft should know that we're treating this incident not as a public relations problem to be managed, but as an opportunity to strengthen our organizational foundation. The costs of these immediate improvements are already factored into our quarterly budgets. James Richardson leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from cautious concern to genuine interest. In 20 years of corporate partnerships, he had never seen a CEO address a discrimination incident with such direct action and transparency. Most executives would have downplayed the situation or deflected responsibility to lower-level employees. That's impressive, James admitted. But I have to ask, how do we know this was an isolated incident rather than a symptom of broader cultural issues that could affect our partnership's success? Dr. Lisa Parker opened her laptop and projected technical documentation onto the conference room's secondary screen. Mr. Richardson, I'd like to address that question from a different angle. The AI algorithms that Meridian has developed for healthcare applications are specifically designed to eliminate bias in medical diagnoses. We've spent millions of dollars and years of research creating technology that ensures equal treatment regardless of patient demographics. She pulled up clinical trial data showing how Meridian systems had improved diagnostic accuracy for underrepresented populations. The irony of this morning's incident isn't lost on us. We've built technology that actively fights discrimination in healthcare, yet we discovered that some of our own employees harbor the same biases our products are designed to combat. Catherine Chen studied the technical specifications with professional interest. So you're saying that your response to this incident is actually aligned with your core business mission? More than aligned, Zara replied. It's essential. If we can't create an inclusive environment within our own organization, how can we credibly promise that our technology will deliver equitable results for your customers? This morning's crisis has forced us to confront a fundamental inconsistency between our stated values and our actual workplace culture. Thomas Miller added corporate governance documentation to the presentation. Microsoft's legal team should also know that we've engaged external law firms to review our compliance procedures and ensure that our response meets or exceeds industry standards for addressing workplace discrimination. We're not just fixing a problem, we're setting a new benchmark for corporate accountability. The Microsoft delegation huddled briefly for a whispered consultation before James Richardson addressed the room again. Ms. Williams, I'll be direct with you. When we heard about this morning's incident, our initial reaction was to postpone this partnership pending a full investigation of your company's culture and management practices. Zara nodded, unsurprised by the admission. That would have been a reasonable response. A $400 million partnership represents significant reputational risk for Microsoft if cultural problems affect our ability to deliver results. Exactly, Catherine Chen confirmed. But your handling of the situation has actually increased our confidence rather than diminishing it. The speed and comprehensiveness of your response demonstrates exactly the kind of leadership we want in a strategic partner. Quote, James smiled for the first time since entering the conference room. Most CEOs would have tried to minimize the incident or blame it on rogue employees. Instead, you've taken full responsibility and implemented systematic changes within hours. That's the kind of decision-making capability that makes partnerships successful. Amanda Foster, who had been monitoring media coverage throughout the meeting, looked up from her phone with surprise. The business press is starting to cover our response positively. Forbes just published an article calling our handling of the incident a masterclass in corporate crisis management. They're praising the speed and transparency of our actions. Dr. Parker pulled up additional technical demonstrations showing how Meridian's AI systems could be integrated with Microsoft's cloud infrastructure. Since we're ahead of schedule, perhaps we could review the implementation timeline and discuss how our cultural improvements will actually strengthen our technical capabilities. For the next hour, the conversation shifted from crisis management to strategic planning. The Microsoft team asked detailed questions about Meridian's algorithms, security protocols, and scalability projections. What had begun as a potential partnership-ending crisis had evolved into a demonstration of exactly the kind of leadership and accountability that Microsoft valued in its strategic allies. As the technical presentations concluded, James Richardson stood and walked to the windows overlooking the city. Ms. Williams, I've been involved in hundreds of corporate partnerships, and I've learned that the true test of a company isn't how they perform when everything goes smoothly. It's how they respond when faced with unexpected challenges. He turned back to face the room. This morning, Meridian Technologies faced a crisis that could have destroyed your reputation and ended this partnership before it began. Instead, you've demonstrated leadership, accountability, and systematic problem-solving that actually makes me more confident about working together. Catherine Chen was already preparing the contract documents. From a legal perspective, we're satisfied that your response demonstrates adequate corporate governance and risk management. Microsoft is prepared to proceed with the partnership as originally negotiated. The relief in the room was palpable, but Zara maintained her professional composure. We're honored by your confidence, and I promise that the cultural improvements we've implemented today are just the beginning. Meridian Technologies will be a partner that Microsoft can trust to uphold the highest standards of innovation and integrity. As the contracts were signed and initial implementation schedules were discussed, Patricia received a steady stream of updates from the investigation team. The suspended employees were being interviewed individually, the new security protocols were being installed, and the mandatory training programs were being scheduled for the following week. But perhaps most significantly, word of Meridian's decisive response was spreading throughout the tech industry. Other companies were reaching out to understand their crisis management procedures, diversity advocates were praising their accountability measures, and potential clients were expressing increased interest in partnerships with an organization that demonstrated such clear ethical leadership. James Richardson shook Zara's hand as the meeting concluded. Ms. Williams, I have a feeling that this partnership is going to be even more successful than either of us originally anticipated. Sometimes the best business relationships are forged through shared challenges. As the Microsoft delegation departed, Zara looked around the conference room at her executive team. They had navigated a crisis that could have destroyed the company's reputation and cost them hundreds of millions in lost partnerships. Instead, they had emerged stronger, more unified, and with a clearer understanding of what it truly meant to build an inclusive, accountable organization. Well, Robert Hayes said with a slight smile, that wasn't exactly how I expected to spend my Tuesday morning. Zara laughed, feeling the tension of the day finally beginning to ease. No, but it's exactly the kind of challenge that proves what Meridian Technologies is really capable of achieving. The crisis was far from over. Investigations would continue, policies would be refined, and the long-term work of cultural change was just beginning. But in the space of a single morning, Meridian Technologies had demonstrated that accountability, leadership, and decisive action could transform even the most damaging situation into an opportunity for growth and improvement. 3 weeks later, the transformed landscape of Meridian Technologies bore little resemblance to the company that had failed its CEO so spectacularly that Tuesday morning. The lobby now featured a comprehensive diversity wall showcasing employees from every department and background, while new security personnel, carefully vetted and extensively trained, maintained professional protocols that emphasized respect and verification over assumption and prejudice. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the external consultant hired to conduct Meridian's cultural audit, sat in Zara's office reviewing her final assessment. As one of the nation's leading experts on workplace inclusion, Elena had evaluated hundreds of corporations, but she had never encountered an organization that had implemented such comprehensive changes in such a short time frame. Your transformation has been remarkable, Elena said, closing her laptop after presenting her findings. Most companies take 6 months to implement the changes you've accomplished in 3 weeks. The employee survey results show a 47% improvement in workplace satisfaction and a 63% increase in confidence that discrimination will be addressed appropriately. Zara reviewed the metrics with satisfaction, but her attention was focused on the long-term implications rather than short-term improvements. The real test isn't whether we can respond to a crisis. It's whether we can maintain these standards when the spotlight fades and the pressure decreases. Through her office window, she could see the bustling activity of a company that had not only survived its crisis, but had emerged as an industry leader in corporate accountability. The Microsoft partnership had progressed ahead of schedule, with their AI healthcare systems already being deployed in 12 major medical centers across the country. More significantly, 3 additional Fortune 500 companies had initiated partnership discussions specifically because they wanted to work with an organization that demonstrated such clear ethical leadership. Jennifer Walsh knocked on the office door and entered carrying a thick folder of completed investigations. As head of human resources, she had overseen the most comprehensive workplace culture review in the company's history. interviewing every employee, and analyzing years of policies and procedures. "I have the final results from our investigation," Jennifer announced, taking a seat across from Zara's desk. "Of the 17 employees who were suspended, 14 have completed their mandatory training and bias education programs. They've been reinstated with formal documentation in their personnel files and will be monitored closely for the next 6 months." Zara opened the folder and reviewed the individual case summaries. Most of the employees had shown genuine remorse for their actions and had engaged seriously with the educational programs designed to address unconscious bias and workplace discrimination. "And the other 3? Sarah Chen from Marketing, David Kumar from Software Engineering, and Marcus Thompson from Security have been terminated," Jennifer replied matter-of-factly. Sarah showed no understanding of why her behavior was problematic, and actually argued that she was being unfairly punished for, quote, "just watching." David violated multiple company policies by live-streaming internal security procedures and refused to acknowledge that his actions contributed to the hostile environment. Marcus has been uncooperative throughout the investigation and expressed no willingness to change his approach to security protocols. The terminations weren't unexpected, but they represented an important signal about Meridian's commitment to accountability. In the corporate world, employees who couldn't adapt to inclusive workplace standards would find fewer and fewer opportunities as companies prioritized culture alongside technical skills. "What about Jake Rodriguez?" Zara asked, noting his absence from the termination list. Jake completed an intensive month-long training program with security professionals who specialize in bias-free protocols, Jennifer explained. "He's been assigned to a different location and will work under direct supervision for the next year." His case was borderline, but he demonstrated genuine understanding of his mistakes and committed to significant behavioral changes. Patricia Morrison appeared in the doorway with a tablet full of meeting requests and media inquiries. "Ms. Williams, you have the Harvard Business School interview in 30 minutes, followed by the Congressional Subcommittee preparation call. The Wall Street Journal also wants to schedule a follow-up interview about the long-term impact of your crisis management approach." The national attention had been unexpected but welcome. Zara's handling of the discrimination incident had become a case study in business schools, a reference point for corporate governance experts, and a model for other companies facing similar challenges. Speaking requests poured in from conferences, universities, and professional organizations seeking to understand how effective leadership could transform crisis into opportunity. Dr. Rodriguez gathered her materials and prepared to leave. "Zara, I want you to know that your response to this incident has influenced how I approach consulting with other organizations. You've proven that accountability and decisive action can actually strengthen, rather than damage corporate reputation when handled with integrity and transparency." As Elena departed, Thomas Miller entered with updates on the operational improvements that had emerged from the crisis response. As Chief Operating Officer, he had overseen the implementation of new security protocols, employee training programs, and workplace culture initiatives that had transformed daily operations throughout the company. "The new security procedures are working exceptionally well," Thomas reported. "We've had 0 incidents of discriminatory behavior in 3 weeks, and employee feedback indicates much higher confidence in our workplace environment. The external security firm we hired has actually asked to use our protocols as a model for other corporate clients." More importantly, the cultural changes had begun affecting business performance in measurable ways. Employee productivity had increased, internal collaboration had improved, and client satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs. Companies that felt confident about Meridian's ethical standards were more willing to share sensitive data and engage in long-term partnerships. Robert Hayes joined the meeting with quarterly financial projections that reflected the positive impact of the company's enhanced reputation. "The Microsoft partnership is exceeding revenue targets by 23%, and we've signed preliminary agreements with 2 additional healthcare systems that specifically cited our corporate culture as a deciding factor in their vendor selection process." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. What had begun as a potentially devastating crisis had ultimately strengthened every aspect of Meridian's business operations. The company's stock price had recovered and exceeded previous highs. Partnership opportunities had multiplied, and employee retention had improved significantly. Amanda Foster, the head of corporate communications, arrived with the latest media analysis showing how Meridian's story had influenced broader conversations about workplace discrimination and corporate accountability. were being cited in academic papers, business journals, and diversity advocacy reports as an example of how companies can address systemic problems through proactive leadership rather than reactive damage control. The ripple effects extended far beyond Meridian Technologies. Other corporations had begun implementing similar rapid response protocols for discrimination incidents. Business schools were teaching Zara's crisis management approach as a case study, and diversity consultants were using the Meridian model to help other organizations address their own cultural challenges. But perhaps most significantly, the incident had sparked conversations throughout the tech industry about the gap between stated diversity values and actual workplace experiences. Companies that had previously given lip service to inclusion were now implementing substantive changes, recognizing that authentic accountability was becoming a competitive advantage in attracting both talent and clients. Zara stood and walked to her office windows, looking down at the lobby where the transformation had begun. The same marble floors and security turnstiles remained, but the atmosphere was completely different. Employees moved through the space with confidence and mutual respect. Security personnel followed professional protocols that emphasized service rather than suspicion, and visitors commented frequently on the welcoming, inclusive environment. "You know what I've learned from all of this?" Zara said, turning back to face her executive team. "The most important leadership moments aren't the ones you plan for in strategic meetings or board presentations. They're the unexpected challenges that force you to demonstrate what your values actually mean when they're tested under pressure." Jennifer Walsh nodded thoughtfully. The employee interviews revealed something interesting. Many people said they had witnessed or experienced smaller incidents of bias or discrimination over the years, but they assumed that speaking up wouldn't make a difference. Now they understand that the company will take action when problems are identified. The cultural shift was perhaps the most valuable outcome of the entire crisis. Meridian Technologies had evolved from a company that talked about diversity to an organization that actively protected and promoted it. Employees felt empowered to address problems before they escalated, managers had clear protocols for handling sensitive situations, and leadership had demonstrated that accountability applied to everyone regardless of position or tenure. Thomas Miller checked the time and reminded everyone about the upcoming Harvard Business School interview. "Zara, they're specifically interested in how you maintain business operations while implementing such comprehensive cultural changes. The case study they're developing will be used in MBA programs nationwide." As her team departed to handle their respective responsibilities, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought Meridian Technologies to this point. The company she had built from a garage startup had always been technically innovative, but the events of that Tuesday morning had forced an evolution in what it meant to be a truly successful organization. The Microsoft partnership was thriving, new business opportunities were materializing regularly, and the company's reputation had never been stronger. But more importantly, Meridian Technologies had become the kind of workplace she had always envisioned, one where talent was recognized regardless of background, where problems were addressed with transparency and fairness, and where leadership meant accepting responsibility rather than deflecting blame. Patricia appeared for the final time that afternoon, tablet in hand with the day's accomplishments and tomorrow's priorities. "Ms. Williams, the Harvard interview prep materials are ready, and I've confirmed your keynote speech at the National Diversity Leadership Conference next month. Also, the documentary crew from CBS wants to schedule the follow-up filming for their segment on corporate transformation." As Zara prepared for her next commitment, she realized that the story of that Tuesday morning would continue to resonate far beyond Meridian Technologies. It had become a reminder that effective leadership required courage to confront uncomfortable truths, wisdom to implement meaningful changes, and integrity to maintain high standards even when no one was watching. The young woman who had been denied entry to her own building 3 weeks earlier had not only reclaimed her position but had transformed it into something more powerful, a platform for demonstrating that accountability, inclusivity, and business success were not competing values, but complementary strengths that could elevate entire organizations and industries. In the end, the security guards who had laughed at her fake ID had inadvertently triggered a transformation that would influence corporate culture for years to come. Sometimes the most important lessons emerged from the most unexpected sources, and the most profound changes began with the courage to demand better from ourselves and our organizations. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.